Okay friends, welcome back to the third video on the Admate Route 554, the Parable of the Village. Now I just briefly want to mention, because I think I forgot to mention at the beginning, was that in the links below this video you have links to the thought paper and the road map and the 5 main stations chart that you can download and look at and read along in this with me as we go forward. So let's just pick up where we left off on page 6. They would not see the Father and the Son until they exited the 5th station. All 4 groups were perplexed. So here's your 5th station, your 3rd station. But not until the 5th station, when individual cleansing is complete, will we be able to see the Father and the Son. So all 4 groups were perplexed. They would now have to learn what was taught in all of those 4 stations, which is, we've been studying this. Here's your 4 stations, and here's your 5th station, individual cleansing. Since they already understood what was revealed in the 1st main station, Calvary, the cross, 1st agenda, individual forgiveness. Since they already understood what was revealed in the 1st main station, which was the death of the Son on planet Earth, which brought forgiveness and reconciliation to the global village of planet Earth. Prior to the commencement of their journey, many of them also recalled the stories about the 7 small villages that the Father had set up, and how 5 of them needed to repent: Ephesus, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, and Laodicea. But for some reason, this matter did not make any sense to those who took the 1798 exit, and the other group that exited on 1843. All 4 groups figured that more truth would unfold for them in the near future. But for now, they were content with the fact that they had all made it safely into the Father's house, even though they would have to wait, since they would now commence their journey from the 3rd main station, 3rd agenda, of the Father's house, over to the 4th, corporate cleansing, and over to the 5th, individual cleansing. See, basically what we're talking about is this same period in these prophetic dates. The man and Lynn's prophetic numbers is just all outlined right here in metaphors, so we can remember them. They were all so happy and excited, but little did they realize that there would be dangers and perils along the way to the 5th station, the 5th agenda, individual cleansing. Dolores Whitestone. I believe you know who that is referring to. After arriving at the 3rd main station on exit 1844, right here, there was a great gathering, and all the groups got to meet a very kind and frail-looking young lady whose name was Dolores Whitestone. She spoke to all 4 groups and told them that it was her belief that the 2,300-mile journey had ended, and that there would not be any more exits after 1844. But later she herself was surprised to find out that the journey would continue up to the 5th main station, the 5th agenda. This was basically the same information given to the 4 groups after experiencing the disappointment upon entering exit 1844 and not meeting the Father and the Son. The information was provided by the servant of the Father on the road map, whose title was Revelation 10. And we'll need to get more into that. Very interesting. The young, frail-looking lady also stated that upon entering exit 1844, a system of truth was unveiled, which would take the traveler on the road from the very beginning up to the very end of the journey. Well, eventually all the groups cooperated, and there was much joy and zeal as they all prepared themselves for their journey to the 5th station. Okay? Excuse me. But soon, strange things started happening. Many of the travelers became very legalistic and had lost sight of the fact that it was the righteousness of the Son which provided the information on the road map, and not themselves. Dry hills of Gilboa. There was a little hotel just off the main station, 3, whose address was 1888 Righteousness by Faith Way. Here's 1844, here's 1888. Righteousness by Faith Way. Here's your little hotel. Many of the travelers entered there and heard some of the most amazing messages ever given by 2 other travelers, Jones and Wagner, on the road in relation to the topic of how to relax and abstain from your own works during your journey by letting the Father of the special village and his Son, the man in linen, complete all the travel arrangements and accommodations of the journey on your behalf. And that if you tried to work your way without their help, you would ultimately fail. As it turns out, many of these travelers were disgusted with this message and rejected it, and others were confused. Now here is pulling in, as we pulled in from exit 1517 Protestant Reformation history, now we're pulling in Laodicean history with regard to the dry hills of Gilboa, 1888, righteous by faith, and how the message was rejected. Dolores Whitestone stated that the Father's Spirit was offended, and that he had sent a most precious message to all the travelers on the road. But unfortunately, the message was despised and ignored and rejected. Later, some of these legalistic travelers wanted to gain control of the 3rd main station. And Dolores Whitestone came before a meeting of all the travelers and told them they all needed to repent and let the owner of the station handle things his way. The owner of the station had given explicit orders that while he was away, there was to be formed a committee of 25 travelers with a rotating chairman who would not be in office for more than a period of 12 months at a time. Now, I'll need to refer you to the manuscript, The Hour and the End. It is striking at you, chapter 9, some history that documents all these historical facts. If you'd like a copy, we can email you a copy. Our email is in the links below. Just ask for it. Request a free copy. Now let's get back. Okay. As it turns out, there was a minor meeting in which 6 of those committee members were present. So the question is, what happened to the rest? This small group of men put a gag order on the next meeting, and the rest of the delegates were not allowed to speak until after the meeting was finished. Well, as it turned out, one of those travelers who spoke as the chairman was voted in as permanent chairman for the Road Construction Corporation, and this decision ran contrary to the instructions of the owner of that special village. Later, when this third meeting was finished, others spoke in favor of the first meeting and asked the question as to why the agenda of the first meeting was not allowed to go through. There were other warnings given about kingly power taking control of the travelers in Main Station 3, as well as warnings about the danger of centralization. We now come to alternate route 554. Many of the travelers that took the alternate route of 554 recalled the televised news reports about the 5 fallen kings upon entering exit 1814. Remember those 5 fallen kings? Justinian, Charlemagne, the Great, Charles V, Napoleon, the 5 warlords? Revelation 17. 5 are fallen. And these travelers were aware of what was now beginning to take place at Main Station 3, 1844. It just so happens that when that decision was made, Dolores Whitestone sent a letter letting those travelers know that the owner of the special village was not at all pleased with their decision. And he stated that this once faithful special village had become a harlot, a house of merchandise from where his divine presence had departed. Dolores Whitestone then stated that by the time that the special village travelers would arrive at station number 4, they would have to repent, or their journey would lead them into a massive detour. Dolores Whitestone, the messenger of the Lord. This was the most serious warning that had ever been given to all the travelers. Again, the alternate route travelers took note of what had taken place. The 554 alternate route travelers had taken note of what had taken place, and they came to the realization that there was a serious crisis among the travelers of the special village, and they just kept writing and taking notes in order to prepare themselves for the entrance into station number 4, which we'll get to on the next chart in part 2 of the parable. Station number 4 being corporate cleansing. The drivers on this alternate route 554 recalled that there were other confused drivers that believed that exit 538 was the correct alternate route exit, which after 1260 miles you would have to exit at exit 1798, which was 16 miles prior to exit 1814. See, between here. He had given clear instructions that if you veered off on the alternate route of 554, all wouldn't be lost. There's your instructions. But you had to know that there was to be a 30-mile between 1814 and 1844, the true 30-mile or 30-year differential between the 1260 and the 1290 from 1814 to 1844. He had given clear instructions that if you veered off on the alternate route of 554, all wouldn't be lost, but you had to know that there was to be a 30-mile differential between exit 1814 and exit 1844, which would be a total of 1,290 miles. from exit 554 and its importance. Admite, until when? From the time, 554. 1798 travelers. This left the travelers who insisted on exit 1798 with an ongoing problem after locating exit 1844. While they eventually located exit 1844, they were still ignoring the endorsed detail given by the priest, the man in linen, concerning the signpost admite, until when? And it relates to the daily, which was the 1290 years from the time it was taken away. It has to terminate here. The 1290 miles or years from 554. Count back, you only arrive here. Again, the signpost admite. The 1798 exit travelers had the air conditioning on, their windows closed, and were indifferent. Alas, they were unaware of their blindness and nakedness while traveling to the destination. Their arrogance continued as to their insistence of exit 1798 was fine, and were so adamant they had the right directions. But those directions, those dates were wrong, because not a single one of them brings you to admite until when? Unto 2,300 days. They ignored the travelers who knew the importance of exit 554 plus 1290 equals admite until when. And so they said, don't bother us with detail, was what they said. Howbeit, on the journey, they never read the headlines of the newspapers concerning the 5 fallen warlords on the journey. We need not worry about that, they said. Well, it was at this point the inevitable warning of the priest had occurred. The 1798 travelers thought very cheery, though very cheery, on the grand tour, knew not their gas was running out. No gas pumps were to be found, no matter how often they referred to the road map. The road had potholes and pitfalls attended by well-meaning road crews offering advice. The map warned of detours and forks in the road leading to dead ends and darkness. Here's your dark dead end. Here's your little car with the... See, they were very cheery on the way. The drunken queen of the highway, with marks emblazoned on her forehead, was gleeful and smiled. She knew the 1798 exit travelers had joined her daughters on the spacious boulevard called Wideway. Here's the Queen's Wideway Boulevard right here. For the rest of the journey. The warning came when it was declared by the Son of the Father, whom many referred to as the man in linen, that the 1798 group entered into another exit known as 1903 General Conference Session Way. Right here. Here's your 1903 General Conference Session Way. And it was at the exit that it was declared by the man in linen that the 1798 travelers had mistakenly entered a house of ill repute, right here, which was one of the business enterprises owned by the drunken queen of the highway. the man in linen was very upset and declared that the 1798 group became drunk and intoxicated with false teachings, such as the formation of business enterprises, as well kingly power and centralization of Route 538, 1798, since they claimed that there was no other road map. It was a very scandalous matter, and later it was learned that the other groups followed the 1798 groups and dismissed the travelers of 554 as being wrong. Contributed by a friend of John Bunyan. And this, friends, is the explanation of the roadmap that we published, that we drew up just to help us understand it, help our friends and family and our little home church group to understand, and put into parable, a modern day parable, metaphor form, of how the 5 agendas line up with Christ's high priestly administration, and how to pull together and link in a lot of detail, but when you see it all laid out, it begins to make sense. For the first time in my life, it all begins to make sense. So please stay tuned for the 554, Route 554, the Parable of the Village. This was part 1, but we're going to be doing at some point in the future part 2. So the videos for that part will also show up on the 5 Agendas channel under the same heading, but as part 2. So there's no confusion. So please stay tuned, and thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful.